I'd like to call tonight's Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners workshop to order. If we could all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first up on the docket this evening, item number 2, review contract with the Emmaus Aquatic Club for pool management. Bruce.
Thank you. We are in our discussions with the Emmaus Aquatic to once again provide lifeguard services as well as some pool oversight. We have an agreement. It's our standard agreement. We normally review. We are right within budget, $152,506. We budgeted $152,550 at this point. Unless there's questions from the board, nothing's really changed at this point. We will give them a try again for another year. Not that we're disappointed with their service or anything. We're always looking in recreation on how we can potentially appropriately manage that in-house at some point. That's not really what we're looking to do this year. So we would bring this before the board for consideration in April so that we can get cycled up for the pool season. So unless there's any questions, just more or less the standard review here for you gentlemen.
Okay. Questions for the manager? Okay, item 3, review resolution approving DCNR grant application for comprehensive master park plan. Bruce.
Yeah, the recreation department is currently working on a grant application through DCNR to update our existing plan. Our plan is, I think, 15 years old now. We believe it's time to start that process. You may recall the discussion we had about the need for requesting proposals for vendors, which we did. We got some pricing for our baseline for the grant. Either way, we're still going to recommend it's a 2026 project and include it in the budget for the board. We're hopeful that we may be considered for this grant. Just to complete the application, though, we would ask the board to consider allowing us to move forward and adopting a resolution authorizing us to move forward in the process. We are under a deadline for submission, so we would have this on the first April meeting so that we hit our timeframes.
Questions? Only question, it's really more of a comment from me, is that, there was a time when I first got on this board that we had a lot of different plans for a lot of different things, and none of them were really very actionable as to where we were going to go or how we were going to implement. I would just ask that we're mindful of that with this, that it's actionable, we're realistic in what our goals are. Obviously there's a lot that could be done. There's only certain things that can be done financially, but to make sure that we're, I guess, properly planning for the future when they do this.
And I think it's important, we've heard from Commissioner Robert too on occasion about how we look at our long-term planning and make sure that staff, when we're working through that process, are mindful about those things like affordability and, practical application of what we've already experienced and how we can manage through those things. So I do think that's an important component of this kind of build out for a plan.
I got one.
Yes, Commissioner Beitler.
No, I agree with you, President Higgins. And we're the ones that get it all the time, front line. You had this plan to do this and that, and I always use money as an excuse, but affordability is a better word. We all know that's what puts a lot of our master plans back.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we should take that into consideration when we make a master plan.
Yeah.
What's really affordable in the future.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, engage the master plan. What we need to remember is there is an opportunity there for the grant component, for future funding when we look at these projects, for that background. So sometimes engaging a little more and then working that way back. So it looks like Julie McDonald has a question. She raised her hand, watching the meeting remotely, so. Don't know if you can put it, somehow, Julie, but
And when is the earliest that the commission can provide input on scoping of the overall comprehensive master park plan?
there's components in the request for proposals that's the engagement part for, both citizen plus, boards, and, bringing back some initial concepts to boards so that, they make sure they're proceeding down the right path. So a little further along.
Okay.
We led.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julie, if you're there.
Please speak into the microphone, guys. That's all I had to say. Just please.
You got it, Julie. If you were in the room, it would be a lot easier, but this remote stuff, I don't know. We're gonna,
I had a tooth pulled today.
oh, I hope you feel better.
Yep.
Okay. Item 4, review resolution approving disposition of township records. Doug.
That's the annual bid for getting rid of disposing of records throughout the township. It's a yearly thing, normal procedure.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Item 5, review bids for paving equipment rental. Bids open 3/18. Doug.
Thank you. On the 18th, we open bids for paving equipment rental. This is for the rental of, to do asphalt, that is the pavers, rollers, mill heads, anything involved with paving. There was one bidder, it was Coons and Anthony Paving. It's a 33-month contract. The bid amount is $103,000, but some reference, last year, the Public Works Department only used $46,000. That it is well within the means of the budget. I anticipate that number to somewhat come down. I believe with my background that we've been doing some more in-house stuff as opposed to using that's just a normal commodities bid.
Questions for Doug on the paving bid? Okay, item 6, review bids for crack seal, Craftco Mastic 1 project. Bids opened on 3/18. Doug.
Thank you, as well as continuing for a normal procedure. That's for crack sealing the pre-paved areas. Anticipation for 2026. Just some background. Last year, there was $0 spent in crack sealing. There was $40,000 budgeted. Anticipation this year is budget $50,000. My plan would be to go back and review roads 5 to 6 years, do a 5 to 6 year cycle, and crack sealing roads as needed. Get a plan as opposed to just randomly doing roads. So that's what the one bid was. It was AMS is the bidder on that. Any questions?
Questions for Doug? Yes, Commissioner.
Oh, none.
Oh, okay. Okay, item 7, review bids for cleaning contract. Bids open 3/18. Doug.
Once again, that's a yearly bid. There was 2 bidders, Advance and Jan Pro. This is to clean the building here as well as the community center and the Public Works Annex. That's just a yearly bid. They have line items, which they have a checklist of action items they have to do to clean throughout the buildings. It's just a whole procedure. So any questions?
Questions for Doug? Item 8, update on roadway improvement 2025 program. Bids open on April 7th. Mr. McAdam.
Thank you, Mr. President. As part of the road program for this year, we've been working closely with Doug and Bruce to get this together. This year's paving program will involve 11 roads on the base bid, and then there are 2 stretches of Orchard Road that is shown as an alternate bid. It's approximately 20,000 square yards of wearing course, as well as some base repair, leveling, scratch course, and striping. Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
The next item is item 9 for the microsurfacing. If you don't mind, I'll just roll to that.
One second,
Yep, I'm
Commissioner
sorry, any
Beitler.
questions?
The 11 roads,
I can look and make sure that it is. We have the aerial map up, but I can make sure
if it's not, could you email me that, please?
we will.
I can give you the full list. I can give you the full list.
Yeah,
Just, not for now, just the email.
I had put together a packet, excerpts from the bid for tonight to show on screen. So it's easy enough to send that out.
All right, thank you.
Yep. You want a list, like right now, just say
No,
that?
just
No.
if you just send it to me.
All right.
Okay, item 9 is update on microsurfacing and crack sealing 2025 program. Bids open 4/7.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And it's similar to the paving program. This is another surface treatment that's done every year. This year is approximately 93,000 square yards of microsurfacing proposed with crack seal and curb line seal. There are 4 different developments that are going to be hit with this. Danfield Run, Graymore, Brookside Farms, and Harvest Fields. That will be part of the microsurfacing program. Similarly, I had taken the contract and broke out the basics so we can easily distribute that as well.
Questions for Mr. McAdam? I have one comment. It's not really related to either one of those, but it has to do with road work or sewer work. I know that we've spoken at recent meetings about the starting of some sewer projects that are going on right now. They've been noticeable, they've been efficient, and it's exciting to see things happening. I've been on a couple roads where they had a lane closed because they were putting in either new um, uh, drainage systems or replacing systems, and they're doing an excellent job so far. It's been really, really efficient the way they've done it.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I know that they've been working for, I think, probably close to a month at
Mhm.
this point. And I know that our guys coordinate closely with Doug. So I haven't personally heard of any issues. So I'm assuming that things are moving along smoothly. So good to hear some
Yeah,
regular guy feedback.
yeah, it was good.
And that is a new contractor for us. We've never used them before, and they're actually the low bidder on the Wascosville
Right.
sewer project too. So this is our first experience with them, and it's been at least positive from what I'm hearing as well.
Yeah, they did a small section of sauerkraut last week where, man, they were in and out in no time. They ripped out the old corrugated plastic pipe, put new one in, they had it repaved and all ready to go.
They're using that mechanical flap.
Yeah,
They're nice.
yes. Okay, item 10, review offer for emergency service radios. Bruce.
Yes, so we kind of have a little bit of a mission critical time frame for this. The county is upgrading their emergency service radio system to an 800 megahertz digital based system from their currently old system. As part of this, all fire plus emergency management and EMS radios have to be brought up to speed for that system. What they have currently won't work once that comes up to operation. I believe that's coming sometime, early next year will be the reveal. Part of this project, the county has looked to offer some bulk procurement offer on how they can purchase this. So part of this would be, um, quotes for two quotes for the radios from both fire and Macungie ambulance. And they would look to have a program where we would work with the county. They would give a potential 0% financing for 5 years. The township would have to be the sponsoring agency and engage in an agreement with the county that, we would pay the money back for our agencies. We're trying to have an answer here by the end of this month, of course, so they can proceed forward with their financing plan. We have spoken to Fire. They are working through some logistics on if this is something that, we want to engage the county on, or if it's better to just go on our own, and they would purchase their own radios. I've spoken to Chris over at McCungy EMS. We've discussed their potential needs. We'd be looking at around, about 900,000 in radio operations. So that over 5 years, of course, with no interest is, roughly 200,000 a year, 185,000 a year for that 5 year period. So if we can work with our responders, it's something for us to consider if we would want to be the sponsor. Basically, you're taking those dollars from the county for 5 years with no interest, which is always a potential for a good thing for the municipality. So we would have to notify the county. I have to sign an agreement, which I have to legal already. They're reviewing to see if there's any pitfalls in there for us. And then both agencies will have to decide if they would want to jump on board. So wanted to get this in front of the board since it's kind of mission critical. We got our letter like the first week of March. So here we are. I think it's a good, if we can help the emergency services out that way, and make sure we're covered so that they have to repay the township, I think it could be beneficial to them.
Okay.
We've heard from McCungy Ambulance that they would like to participate. Have we gotten similar feedback from the fire company yet or not?
So we're still working with them. We had a sit down about 2 weeks ago to discuss the program and the project. They wanted to see their finances on a couple things and see what their revenue sources could be for this project. And they're definitely interested if the township's interested. They've expressed that there could be a willingness to participate. I don't want to comment on their internal discussions, but I think it's always a question of participate with the county or just move forward and replace the radios anyway and make those adjustments. We know our peers are doing various things. Some have already been buying radios outright. Some are going to wait for this component. Others are still waiting to see, of course, what this township and other peers are going to do. So there's a lot of pieces where they don't have a definitive answer to me yet, but they are interested in enough that we're bringing this back in front of the board to, if they can give me an answer after their finance team meets to move forward.
And there's no mention of the township, but is the township going to require acquiring compatible equipment for emergency management or?
Yeah, so this project was based upon the number of, well, at least this financing was based upon the number of radios that were provided to the county from fire and EMS only. There was no inclusion on the emergency management side. However, fire, as I understand it, they're verifying their counts in here, actually did anticipate potentially several radios for emergency management on that side. We know that we'll have to budget for various vehicles next year, PW director, Vince, codes. There will be some additional hardware costs, but at some point, we're not included beyond the extras that might have been in there. These counts were taken from like 2 years ago. So they're confirming for me their total radio count and then see what's left for us. And the ambulance service was definitely willing to make sure we had an allotment out of there if, and they would just buy their own and go that route if we wanted to participate that way. So they were very flexible on if we had needs to cover them.
Any other questions for Bruce? Okay, go ahead. Mr. Shoemaker.
Just out of curiosity. So it looks like the existing radios are between 10 and 30 years old.
So the radio system is fairly old here, as I understand it. It's a low band analog system. So various departments here, you can basically buy radios at any time to get on this system. When you move to the digital P25 compliance, it requires certain now parameters. They have things like over-the-air programming, encryption, certain keys that are necessary to be on this. So you could have a 25-year-old radio that would definitely work fairly well on this current dated system, but they won't move up. Basically, like your cell phone, when cell phones went digital, back in the day, that they come to a point where you could always use that, but you can't bring them up to the next capacity, if that makes sense. So some people could have brand new radios in the low band, and they would work just fine. And so there's varying degrees throughout the county.
Okay, item 11, manage.
I have one question.
Bruce, oh, sorry. Mr. Solicitor.
Bruce, do you have the contract between the county, I'm sorry, who is the manufacturer of the new radios, do you know?
I believe it's Harris. I haven't been involved on that side since we don't have a lot of emergency management things. I think it's Harris. You can use Harris, Kenwood, and I believe Motorola is also able on their system. So
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. If you went along, were you locked into one or did you have choice?
you do have a choice. I mean, we would recommend Kenwood at this point from pricing and a reliability thing. So that would be our recommendation if the township was buying radios. So they're in site build out now. That'll take a while for them to get the towers done, and then they would do a rollout. So it's a long process. I want to say they awarded that bid last year, mid last year, late last year, through the county.
Okay, item 11.1, Kratzer Farm upgrades. Mr. Vital.
Yeah, so we had some questions and just wanted to kind of follow up on, as soon as I find my Kratzer plan here. What we wanted to do, we had numerous questions. We looked to sit down as a staff, get a status update on where we are on the project, make sure we're moving forward. So we had the opportunity for a sit down last week. We wanted to look at and just review with the board what the plan was. We had spoken in November and looked at, trying to just blow this up. I'm sorry for the people watching that I'm zooming. We have a base concept plan where off of Bogey Avenue and Creekwood, looking at a driveway, some parking with some pathway to the fishing area. We know that that's our end goal. There's costs, 400 plus thousand, 500,000. Where we are with our $350,000 budget this year, we are going to look to set the phase one component, which would be pathway access along the trail to this point, and then down to the fishing pier. The overall master plan calls for some loop paths throughout this area anyway, from here up and then around to the western portion of the site, and then with an eventual pathway south, and then up along the top component. So with our project estimates, we believe that we can accomplish 2 ADA spots at the bogey lot. We'll clean this lot up internally with Public Works. the contract will be for the ADA spots here, the component of the path, where we come down and around. So that should hit our 350 plus budget for where it is. Have this next concept ready for the parking as we roll out, so that there's no conflict with the driveway not being where it needs to be for this lot. So we're finishing our tweak design as we work through there. We've also made some site visits. I was fortunate enough to be out there Friday. There are some facilities here for stormwater in this area, as well as sanitary sewer through here. So we're mindful about what's in there. When I talked to Brian, he was aware that there are some utilities there. So, we're pushing on that end. Public Works is also looking to do some help me out, Doug. We're going to do some pathways with not mulch, but like a wood chip, wood carpet type mulch to start to lay out pathways and see if we can get them available for people to use and see what the response is. So there will be mid part for the macadam pathway, the 2 spots at Bogey. We'll work to adjust some of the pathways that are already there that are just grass. We want to make sure they're planted nice and then kind of roll those out. So there's some additional seeding that has to get in there at this point. Public Works at some point too, if they get a minute, will work around around this part of the pond, make it a little more attractive, do some general cleanup. There's a lot of brush in there, things of that nature that's not very appealing. So while we have a machine in for some other things, we're going to look to address that. So if you haven't been through, we don't really have it really marked and encouraging at this point, but there is, like I said, grass that's in here that's been mowed to have a little path around this current thing. So as we get some additional, like I said, time and materials, we'll make sure we firm that up for the growing season and then start to promote that out. We're also working on our sign plan for the pathways as well as the park, since there is no signage in the park at this point, so that we can better promote what's down there. So wanted to let everybody know where we are, make sure we're meeting the board's expectations on the phasing component, as they are, like I said, basically we're here. We're in the permitting part. I don't want to have to change the MPDES permit requirement if you guys want more or less. We decided to funnel it towards a smaller project, get that piece down with a budget, close it out, close that MPDES permit out, as opposed to having one large permit that's always open for a significant period of time. So that's where we came with our follow-up meeting. Wanted to just share that with the board, make sure that we're all on the same page and staff's proceeding how you'd wish.
What are the provisions that are being made to get rid of the green slime?
Yeah, so green slime's a little bit separate. I won't speak for the Public Works Director, but
Anticipation, looking to get a hold of the Boat and Fish Commission to see what we can do there. I know it's lack of water, that oxygen just turns the algae. Unless there's an underground spring. I noticed when I was there the other day looking at it and fishing it, it's very low. So I think there's a lack of water getting in there, which creates the algae. So we're looking to contact the Boat Commission, see what we can do about it, as opposed to just if there's a solution.
So what kind of plans are there to get rid of the algae?
I don't know. I have to talk to the Boat Commission, see what they recommend.
yeah, aeration.
Aeration, there's no, that might be a concept.
What do we know about the pond watering hole? I mean, I've seen it once. I walked through this during the winter time. So it was my first time actually seeing it. What do we know about it? Is, depth? Is it a pond? Is it a mine hole? What the story?
So it is a mine hole, as I understand it. We sent the Public Works leadership team on a quest the other day in kayaks out into the pond to see if we knew more about it. And then, of course, I asked Commissioner Beitler as well, who was in it back in the day, swimming in that pond. So he could have answered all the questions that I had prior to us putting the kayak adventure on. But I think what we found, we're varying depths 3 to 7.5 feet. They dropped 8 points in that pond. It is, as we understand it, a mine hole. We don't know if any other fresh water is coming into that, except for, surface water runoff. So we're not sure if it's life sustaining there for fish. We know it's not that deep now at this point. And that gave us a little more concrete answers. We wanted to have that to bring back to the board so you know what we're dealing with. So, did I get that right? I mean, how many?
Yeah.
I don't know how many other shots you took on it.
We did about 8 locations, and they average anywhere from 8 feet to 5 feet, along 4 feet, so it's pretty shallow.
Years back it was deep, but before that giant stormwater pipe was put in, the water used to run from Shepherd Hills down toward that mine hole like a river,
Mhm.
and it got filled in. Because even 40 years ago, if it was 10, 12 foot deep, it was a lot. But it's like a lot of mine holes. People think it's an endless hole, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. And as far as fish always did survive in there. Mainly catfish. But they never got big. They were always small catfish, but you could pull them out one after the other.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they never got really big in there because of the lack of oxygen. But there was always fish in there and wildlife back there. You do put an aerator in. Someone mentioned maybe now would be a good time to run power to that barn. I'm assuming you would come out of the barn to feed it. And transformers right in front of that rental house. And then two, if we're digging up back there, I showed Bruce. I don't know if you checked on that. I believe there's a lateral going to that home. And the lateral runs within, 30, 40 foot of the barn.
Yeah, we're investigating. We found a schematic that the developer was supposed to install in 2000 when they did Rolling Meadow Estates. So part of the cleanouts that we've seen down there correspond to that. We're making sure that the rest of that was put in appropriately. So we're investigating.
And a way to check it would be if there's no septic on the place. It's got to be pumped into the sewer system.
Yeah, so right now there is septic.
There's septic
There has
there.
been septic pumped recently as part of the septic management program that the township's under. So it is located close to that residence. So now we're working to see if what actually is in the ground there at this point.
Oh, it is a mystery then.
We found the prints originally proposed. We're working through that component. So.
Doug, did you pull any water quality samples by any chance?
No, I do not.
Just to address that algae, we may need to, put something in to
And what do we think?
neutralize it.
What are we thinking timeframe for all of this? I know we're just getting to the start of spring and the thaw and growing season.
We're, for the public works work, Doug, do you think you're going to be in there doing some additional seeding for those pathways?
We talked about the seeding actually today. We could probably do some seeding here within the next couple of weeks. To get this drier weather, we'll be definitely going and doing some seeding in the next couple of weeks. As for doing some remediation around the pond, we have a project, Quarry Park Playground. We'll be renting an excavator for that project. After we're done with the excavator there, we'll bring the excavator over the pond to clean up the pond around there. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, that project's going to start, Quarry Park. So we're going to coordinate for that.
Yeah, and I think the other pathways, the actual wood carpet pathways, probably later in the year, once we get some other priority projects done on that end. Our timeframe's still on the macadam pathway. Finish up anything else that we need for that MPDES submission. That could be several months. While we're doing that in tandem, we put the spec out, have that bid so that we're ready for an award kind of at the same time. So we'll hit those marks, and then we can hit the ground running for fall type installation. So that's our game plan here at this point.
I got one last question.
Yes, Commissioner Beitler.
The parking lot, the ADA parking lot, is that gonna be at the gardens?
Yeah, so right now, the first component of this is to get the ADA compliance with two spots here in this area, knowing that our next phase is potentially that parking with the ADA compliance part. So when we reviewed this, that pathway will meet the accessibility code with those spots designated in this area. And then when we are ready for our actually 3 phases, right? The next phase is the first small lot and then an additional lot down by the basin. Oh, well, basin, by the pond.
All right, well, that answered my question. The path will meet ADA requirements. not
Yes.
That we have a parking spot and nowhere to go.
Right.
One last thing, maybe this year if we get a jump on staking that out before they plant.
We actually discussed that today, so that's going to be coming shortly here.
The other question I have is the number of tree stands that are in there. So there's more than a couple. What happens with that? Like, do we remove those or they, I mean, I'm assuming they're private tree stands.
They're private tree stands. We do not remove them at this point. We've just kind of left them for those hunters with the cost, I would think, of them. They know where they are, but we don't have a rule that makes you take them down. I see Vince is.
If I could add to that, we may want to look at some legislation to say.
But a little closer.
We may want to look at some legislation to say that you have to put your name on them, so we can contact you, and they can only, much like state forest, you have to be, you can put them up at a certain time, have them down at a certain time. That way, what you avoid is having these tree stands and trees for 15, 20 years and eventually damage a tree or, so we may want to look into that, but just a thought.
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty much like we're recommending when we do our updates for that hunting area / mapping part. The ordinance is open where we designate and allow it. We can put those restrictions in there.
Probably a good idea. I mean, it is, if we're promoting it as a public open space park, not that we're trying to discourage the hunting part of it, but it can't be all the time. There's got to, I know there's windows for when you can and can't, but to have tree stands up, 365 is probably not effective.
Were they all registered? I thought they were registered before you could put a tree stand there. Or not?
We don't have anything in the code that says
No.
they have to register.
Yeah, my wife was worried somebody was going to shoot her when we were walking through. I'm like, there's nobody up there. Don't worry about it. You're good.
There's over a dozen back there.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Which, one of those things, it always was hunted. There's always 2 points of view there.
Yep, absolutely.
Julie has another question.
But you're right, both parties got to be aware what else is going on.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to that same point, we did have signage made up this year. You guys are aware, so.
Yeah,
It-
all the
it
people
was
called
good,
me saying, why are you letting people hunt
But
here?
bad, right, yeah, exactly.
We've
No,
always
but-
let people hunt here. We're just telling you now.
Correct,
Yeah.
right. So,
That is a hot topic, especially over on the east side of Brookside
Mm-hmm.
by the new park over there. That
Yes.
I got lectured in my driveway at home on how this gentleman hunted there for years, and right now he is allowed to hunt there. So I told him, you're just got to check the rules and follow the rules.
yeah, like Bruce said earlier, we are looking at updating these areas as we expand. We're putting these trails through, we're putting parks, so we're on the back side of that, we're always looking at updating our maps and the locations where we allow it. unfortunately, for that side of it, it's getting less and less, but we still want to hope to provide both types of recreation here in the township as much as we can, so.
Ms. Julie has a question.
Julie?
Sorry, had to unmute there. Yeah, I realize this is a public park property, but I also know that there are homes pretty much around the property. What kind of hunting is allowed there?
That archery hunting only, Julie.
So it's just bow hunting. There's no firearms allowed.
Thank you.
All the hunters today use them little crossbows.
Yeah.
A crossbow is considered archery hunting and we follow the regulations of the Pennsylvania Game Commission.
Okay. 11.2, Mack Trucks Modification Plan. Bruce?
Yeah, so we wanted to have a discussion with the board. We've been approached by Mack Trucks about their, I believe it was called the Depot Properties development over between Orchard, across from the plant on Orchard, what would be west towards Albertus, right at the corner of Albertus Road and Orchard. You may or may not remember that was supposed to be a site facility for the storage of trucks where they would be decked before they went out for delivery, as well as a maintenance building, and running that to give them a little more flexibility in their operations. So we were approached about questions with a plan that was approved, and I'll let Brian and Vince kind of take over from there on what happened with it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Mac had approached us, and we have not yet received a revised plan, but they wanted to meet with us first, and like Bruce said, we wanted to bring it to the attention of the board before we see a plan. So they're proposing to modify the approved plan that was approved back June 20th of 2019. Now they are proposing to phase the development. And what they're going to do is they'd like to use where the emergency access was currently on the approved plan. They'd like to use that as an access point to start their construction and then phase it that way from the back. So that emergency access was off of Orchard Road by the old railroad crossing. That'll give them time to start the improvements. As part of that improvements, phase one, I guess, again, this is preliminary, we don't have a plan, but that first phase would be also all the berm and buffering between the two residential properties that are on Orchard. That's part of the original, the phase one plan, once they start excavating for the parking lot. As a later phase, maybe 3 or 4, again, not in stone, that's when they're proposing to install the bridge in the original location, which would access Orchard more towards Albertus Road. But again, because of their business operation changing from 2019 to now, for them to start the project, it's going to be more of a phased approach. So they want to come back in and offer that plan in front of the Board of Commissioners. So,
And if I could just real quick, Vince,
Sure.
I think, part of the things that I had concerns with were, at one time before that was approved, the way it was, the Orchard Road Bridge needed definitive repairs for it. It was in not good shape. We made those repairs several years ago, and that weight limit there is, able to accommodate where what they would need to get across and use that as an entrance. So I felt comfortable at least, considering that idea for the township on saying that bridge was definitely deficient, but now, we're loaded appropriately with the engineering side on that. So that was one of the key items that was discussed. And the other part, sorry, Brian, and I'll let you jump back in here. The other part that we really wanted feedback on, we consider this, at least as a staff, as this modification of the plan for the phasing, and to bring this straight to the board and not through the planning commission. So That's why we wanted to make sure we got it in front of you as we work out any concerns that the board might have down there, so we can address them now prior to it coming before the board instead of going the planning commission route and then moving forward. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's because essentially the plan is a phasing plan. You know, the nuts and bolts of it aren't changing, it's just gonna be phased. You know, they're continuing to go through with the full plan, just in phases. Not gonna be all one and get everything done and then start using it. You know, I mean, they wanna phase it appropriately, so. Brian, if you have any engineering?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is that the end result of what was previously approved doesn't change. The layout's the same, driveway accesses are the same, the stormwater management is exactly the same. By phasing it, what it'll allow them to do is to actually take some truck trips off the roads, because the way they explained it, the different stages of when they're prepping trucks for sale and to be delivered, they'll take them in different stages of being done, take them somewhere else, bring them back, take them out, bring them back. So what they want to do is effectively take the entire area that was going to be paved or building and put it in stone. That stone is the exact same stone base that was proposed as part of the original approval, and basically just have trucks on there. So and then eventually when they are making some other changes with their logistics and plans and procedures and whatnot, they would eventually come in and build the rest of the improvements. But what this does is it allows them to have the movement of their product be much more efficient and effectively get rid of a whole boatload of truck trips that the township roads are currently seeing. So in addition to it being a fairly straightforward process in terms of creating a phasing plan that didn't exist before, the procedural part of that is pretty straightforward. But it's actually one of those rare projects where there's actually a tangible benefit to the township if they go at it from this direction, this angle.
And this is the piece of property that was the last one that was allowed to have a warehouse, but then was sold to Mac for this purpose, right?
No,
No, this is a different one?
no, this,
Veritech up the road.
yeah, that was the one at the corner of Shonik and Albertus.
No, originally, this piece of property, we had gotten, the day that it came out of the zoning, we had gotten a submission from Mr. Jandal for this property. And then they decided not to build, they sold it to Mac for this purpose. I'm like 99% sure. Because there was a lot of questions about where the bridge was and how long it had to be and all that stuff. And this was the day it came out of the code, they filed their intent to build at like 4:30 that day. And then it went away when Mac bought it.
Interesting.
I think I do remember that,
Yeah.
but Veritech.
Veritech was
right
up the road. Yes.
But at that time, they were calling it truck movers. Well, and
Yeah.
I remember back here in the committee, that bridge was like in-depth study and approval and revised. And like Vincent, the engineer, said, that this plan was big to begin with.
Mhm.
So if they're just phasing it in, as far as I'm concerned, it's my opinion, we should expedite this for Mack Truck, because Mac's a good resident in our township, and we don't want to lose Mack Trucks. So, just hoping that, we make it easy for them, smooth. Not easy, make it go smooth.
You know, and to that point, you
Work
know,
with
I-
them.
yeah, to that point, I think, and that's why, you know, as staff and township consultants, you know, it's not modifying the plan, something that would have to go in front of the planning commission, right? You know, as engineer McAdams said, it's not really changing, it's just getting phased.
And we do want to be mindful, and that's, you know, hopefully with the discussion, we know that main entrance was more towards Albertus Road. We know that this could be a little bit more impactful to those residents that are back in that area, as it would be a main point now of them moving in until they finish the phase up front with the bridge. And that could be, potentially several years as they finish their permitting and go in that direction. We are concerned, or at least we've expressed that we want to make sure that there's adequate buffering there. We want to make sure that nothing's changed where, maybe there's potential headlights there or lighting that might have changed that we would need to look at and be mindful. So we are trying to balance knowing that it is the ultimate plan, but that was supposed to be an emergency access point only. So that's changed a little bit from that component, but the layout is the same.
Yeah, and to that point, in this township staff, as well as consultants, are conscious of existing residences and, impacts to property owners. One of the things that Mac came in right off the bat was we acknowledge that the approved plan had a large berm with a lot of landscape. That is going to be done as part of this first phase. Since the previous project wasn't phased, that would have happened eventually. They recognize the situation and they want to be good neighbors, at least the way it was expressed, and I take them at their word. So that, that component is part of what's going to go in first.
We'll just
So-
have to do outreach to those neighbors just to make sure they understand what's going on and not have them find out, unfortunately, not everybody's up on everything that's going on around here, but we want to make sure that they're in the loop on what's happening so that they can express any concerns that they may have.
Well, and Engineer McAdam definitely made that as his suggestion and recommendation to the MAC staff of, it would be a good idea to get down and start to knock on some doors and talk to residents there on what
Mhm.
those expectations are and, have that kind of conversation.
Yeah, and as part of that conversation in that meeting, they were aware we were going to bring this to the workshop and they were going to try to do their outreach
Yeah.
before this meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah, they're definitely aware of that.
Well, okay, my biggest concern is the bridge. And I realize that there's been repairs to what was intended to be a emergency bridge, but having trucks pounding on it all day long, every day, there is a chance that there would be additional structural upgrades required, and I would like to have a condition in the agreement that if such upgrades are required, then MAC would pay for it because they're really the only recipient of it. That two or three houses is not going to overtax even a wooden.
No, and that's a good point. And, we can make sure on the bridge engineering side, where that stands. And I will say it's actually, under posted what the ratings are. If you look at the posting, we are definitely structurally sufficient at this point in time, which is a good comment on where it might be in 2 or 3 years, and what they've done on those impacts. But, probably the worst component is the actual build out when they are trucking materials in there. That could see a lot of trips for that side of it. And then less weight on those unfinished, just cabs and chassis. But that's a good point to note.
Yeah, I think if we had something where we're inspecting that bridge every year, that they're using it for this purpose or they're crossing it as much, just so that they know what's happening to it, we know what's happening to it. Probably more frequently than we normally would on a bridge of that type.
My take is that the bridge over the creek that they would have to build is a fairly expensive proposition. And I would not be surprised if that phase 4 never happened. And so that bridge could be in use in 20 years. And so that's my concern.
Well,
But
the way they explained their desire to us was that the access closer to the railroad tracks, that was on the approved plan as an emergency access, right? And they fully acknowledged, we're not trying to get away from that. And I agree with you, there is that potential concern, like, what if they never build their other access? I would think it'd be easy enough, and I would assume that they would be agreeable to condition that, like, you can use this emergency access for your construction for now, but you do have to put that other. This has a shelf life, so to speak. I think if we arrive, they did give us some target dates for when they expect this construction operation to take place for this stone, I'll say, parking area until they move into the other stuff. And I think the way the meeting went, their initial concern, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were kind of like, we need to get this going because we're renting space in a bunch of other places. And since this is already approved, let's get this in, so we're not paying to rent trucks. So I think their intentions are good, but you know, that old expression about,
Yeah, we just gotta make sure we're covered. That
Yeah,
this doesn't
exactly.
turn into a parking lot and that's their only access.
right, so we can, and I made a note about the bridge with them paying for anything that might be needed because of the extra loading and all of the trucks that they anticipate. We can also add a condition that there is some sort of time frame where, all right, you have X amount of, a year, 2 years, whatever, then you've got to get that other stuff going. Sure, we can.
Okay, well, yeah, so
So
it
there you
is,
go.
the bridges are my concern.
Yeah, and I think I have to look because I don't remember. I actually think that's a greater than 20-foot span bridge, which means it's in the NBIS bridge inspection program. So that gets inspected by the state bridge inspector every year annually. So I'm about 75% sure that that's a 20+ foot span. So I have to look. But if not, we could make sure that it's getting
Yeah.
inspected regularly if it, like we have with our other bridges for our bridge plan.
Any other questions on the MAC issue?
Just one more comment.
Yes, Commissioner
Just
Byler.
some history, you know, Mac initially owned that. Then they sold it
To
to probably
Jandal.
Jandal. Then they got it back.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 19, 18, 19, 20, that used to be the Mack Truck Gardens back there. That was open to employees to use that for gardens. And I remember, and my wife would remember this story. When she learned to drive, we went in that field by the gardens, and she was in a 61 Chevy pickup, stick shift, and I was running the side of it. Push the clutch in, let it out, drive a little. When I yelled, push it in before you hit the brake, and she learned to drive stick shift in that field.
No, listen,
With me running the side of the truck.
yeah, and Mac did us a really good thing by getting that land back because that could have been a warehouse and it would have been the last one, or at least outside of where we're legally obligated to allow. But it was great news when they got it back for what they want to do with it because it's a much better use than what it would have been.
It is, and again, I'm pro Mac. I hope
Yeah.
it goes smooth.
So it sounds like the board is okay with us proceeding to come directly to the board as a plan modification. We'll note the concerns that we've heard, at least this evening for the bridge, and we'll make sure staff concerns are met. One of those being the outreach to residents, either by MAC or the township. We'll make sure that that's occurring. But then the game plan would be, it'll be fairly aggressive. We think that, we may have that in front of the board potentially the first week of May at this point. So just wanted to try to set some expectations on where we are and what they're pushing on their time frame as well. So as long as that's all right, we didn't want to not conversation, then bring it back to you at the workshop in April with no time for feedback before a May rollout. So if we have the components, the resolution, and the plan for the April workshop, we'll make sure that we include that again so that you have that to review for the May period, if
Very
that's all
good.
right with the board.
Sounds like a plan. Item 12, are there any other department reports tonight?
Oh,
Item
Vince,
13, public
sorry,
comment on
sorry.
agenda topics.
Sorry,
Oh, I'm
Vince.
Sorry,
sorry.
man. No, I would,
Vince? Jeez.
not quick enough on the draw.
Yes, Mr.
I-
Trangucci.
I just wanted to add tonight, before you see this as well, in speaking of plan modifications, we are working with Bet Simca again on their plan modification. And just for the board's purview here. It's not going as quick as they would like it, but unfortunately, we're waiting for items for them, from them. They have worked through LCCD with their process and their NPDS permit. They've gotten direction from LCCD, so they are making modifications. The township, however, is still waiting for a revised and resubmitted plan. So we do not have that. The rabbi was hoping to be on the agenda next month, but we do not have enough time to review that. So just in case you would hear anything, I mean, they are going through the process, but we need things before we can give it, bring it in front of you guys. So not only that, they are going through their final inspections right now with key codes on the existing building that's there. So it's in process, but again, it's probably not as fast as they'd like it to go, but when we get the information, we can review it and get comments back to them. That's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions for Ben? Okay, item 13, public comment on agenda topics. Seeing and hearing none. With that,
I would just note that this evening, if the board's available, I'd like to have a fairly brief executive for personnel, as well as some potential litigation to update the board on if it's okay with the board.
there will be a executive session following this meeting to deal with personnel and potential litigation. With that, we are adjourned.